Good evening and welcome to the 2022 Webster Selectmen Forum. My name is Leslie Baker and I'll be your moderator this evening. We're here to have a discussion with the three candidates for Board of Selectmen this year. But before we jump into discussion, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight we have with us our three candidates for Board of Selectmen, and we are going through a question and answer series. The candidates have all received the questions ahead of time so that they could be well prepared for tonight's session. And we will take turns with who is starting answering each question. So our three candidates that we have are two incumbents, Ms. Lisa Contos, Mr. Earl Gabor, and a former selectman who is coming back for an opportunity again, and that is Mr. Don Borg. So welcome and thank you to all of you for coming this evening. We'd like to start with giving you the opportunity for an opening statement. And Ms. Contos, would you like to start?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Leslie, and I'd like to thank the Democratic Town Committee for hosting this event on an annual basis. I think it's a really important opportunity for the candidates as well as for the citizens to hear from their candidates. So just as a recap, I am Lisa Contos. I'm a lifelong resident of Webster. Went to school in town, both at St. Anne's School, and I'm a Bartlett graduate. Worked in town for many years locally at Marfray in Commerce, and I am coming before the town to run for re-election in my second term. Really excited to really be putting my name forward again. My first term was very interesting, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but I think for any new selectman, the first term, there's a lot of learning that goes on. So I am really excited about being able to take that learning, drive that forward, and work with the new town administrator.
Yes, thank you, Democratic Committee, for having us tonight again. My name is Earl Gabor. I was raised in Dudley, but lived in Webster all my adult life. I was actually born in Webster, too. Graduated Bartlett High School, the old Bartlett High School, and have lived in town all my life, raised a family of two daughters, and retired about 10 years ago and got involved with town politics. Back then, the finances were in dire straits, and we were starting to see a lot of problems with the water, and that got me interested. I started going to meetings and came up through the ranks, various committees, and ran 3 years ago for selectmen after being on other committees. And I'm running for re-election. I think it's a good way to give back to the community. It's a good way to understand the issues that the community face, and it's a good way to contribute to the community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Borg?
Welcome, and not welcome, thank you. I want to thank the Democratic Town Committee for hosting this event. It was a long ride, but we made it without any tickets, so that's a good thing. I just want to introduce myself for those who I haven't met over the years. Again, my name is Don Bork. I was on the fire department for 11 years here in the town of Webster. I served as a selectman for 9 years, and we had some interesting years. We had some great years, and we've had a lot of growth over those 9 years, and the town is doing very well right now. We want to continue that, but with the one position that came up and that was available, I decided to throw my hat in the ring one more time for the 1 year that's open, and hopefully, if we're elected, we can get in there and do what we need to do to keep Webster moving forward. But before I go on or I end, I just wanted to congratulate the Board of Health, all the emergency services in the town, and Doug Willitson for doing such a great job heroically, working so hard during COVID-19 and trying to keep us all safe. And I think that's important that we recognize all those in the town hall and emergency services for everything that they did. So thank you.
Well, let's take this opportunity to learn a little bit more about the details of each candidate. Mr. Gabor, if you would start us with our first question. What are your top 3 priorities if elected, and what are your plans for implementation?
Thank you. I just want to mention that in my mind, after this year, actually the past 3 years as selectman, but this year especially, just turning the corner on COVID a bit, I think the biggest thing is communication. I think you can apply that to almost any situation, but I think for the town, communication is number 1. In fact, I don't know if anybody's aware or not, but the town recently applied for a state MVP to become certified with the state for that, and that MVP stands for Mass Vulnerability Program, and that has to do with the unsettled weather and the crises that we've seen and climate change and all of that. It has to assess the preparedness. But under all the things that were brought to light that the town needs to address, the biggest thing was communication, identified by everyone. And I think that holds true to continue on as selectmen. The second thing is focus on the infrastructure, and again, the impact from climate change on that. I think we've probably seen recently some of the circumstances that are affecting the Water Sewer Commission with the water and PFAS and so on and so forth. That's going to take real attention for roads, water, and sewer over the coming years. The third thing is to deal appropriately in this financial and economic climate. I think we've had the comfort of growth in town for probably half dozen years or better. I think things are changing, and I'm going to stop there.
Thank you. And Mr. Bork?
Well, the very first one was to continue the improvements of East Main Street to Main Street. We've done some great improvements, or the town has done some great improvements over the last year or two, but there's so many other ways that we can improve from East Main Street all the way down to Main Street, because I really consider all of that one, our main street going all the way through town. Because I can't even, if there was a number, I wish I had it, to tell you how many cars go right through this Main Street, the South Main Street, to East Main Street. So that'd be the first one. The second one is work on becoming a stronger business community or a stronger business town. We've seen some ways that we've improved over the years, but one of my recommendations is work with the EDC to entertain other businesses to come to town for vacant spaces that can potentially meet with the landlords to see about sprucing up vacant windows and spaces throughout the town. We've seen in other areas where they've put paintings or what have you in the windows, so it just doesn't look like something that's a completely empty space. And number 3 was, how do you want your town to look? Get the input from the community. Do one of those survey monkeys that we've done in the past and find out what they, or the residents of the town, want the town to look like. I think that would be extremely important.
Wonderful, thank you. Ms. Conta?
Great, thank you. I think when we're asked to give top 3, that's really difficult to do because there's so many aspects to focus in on. So as I start out sharing some of my thoughts, I'll say that I think the first thing that we all have to do is be adaptable. I came in with some priorities last time I ran, and as it turned out, we faced a pandemic, right? And that's where we all need to be flexible and adaptable as things change in the town, in the environment, and as things come up. However, with that said, one of the things that I think is really important is we have a brand new town administrator. So helping Rick get acclimated in this town, building a relationship with him, is really very important to us and for the town to get him established. So that's really important. I think staying the course with some of the things I talked about last time is how do we make sure that we're being fully transparent. I'm going to jump on something that Earl said is, communication is critical. Nowadays, we have so many different ways in which we can communicate. We need to take advantage of all of those ways and do that in both what I like to call a push and pull format. The ease of doing business with the town, I think, is important. As things are becoming more digital, we have to be thinking along those lines as well. And I think in closing, when I think about priorities and how we go about doing this, no one individual selectman can set that direction. It's important as a committee that we come together and we establish goals, working together to find commonality and set those up as objectives for the town administrator to follow through on.
Thank you. That's a great segue to our next question, which is what do you see is the role of a selectman in Webster? Mr. Bork, would you like
Sure.
to start us?
I took this off of Wikipedia. The basic function consists of calling town meetings, proposing budgets to the town meeting, setting policy, public policy, calling elections, licensing, setting certain fees, overseeing certain volunteer and appointed bodies, and creating basic regulations. And that was from Wikipedia. What do I see as our role? Our role is to advise the town administrator, not to get involved with any of the day-to-day politics, not to get involved with the fire department or one-on-one with the police department or anything like that. They are, the town administrator, Rick, is the one that runs the town. It's our role as members of the Board of Selectmen to advise the town administrator on things that we think that would be better for the town.
Ms. Contos?
Great. So when we talk about the role of the selectmen, I think there's, by nature of our role, there are state laws and bylaws that we're obligated to follow. So those are some of the things that we do on a more regular basis related to town meeting warrants, making appointments, hiring our staff and town council, issuing grants for licenses and permits. So there's those types of things that are a responsibility. But beyond that, we have other coordination and strategic responsibilities, looking at setting broad policy and strategic direction. And that's one of the things that we would be doing with the town administrator. But kind of taking off of what Dawn just said is we have some real distinct boundaries that we have to respect and honor. And it's not our role to get involved with tactical day-to-day operational activities. We should also be looking to bring boards together. We have done that in the past. We have tri-board meetings. We have brought in our state senator and legislator. Those are also very important things that we should be doing as the select representatives for the town. But lastly, I think it's really important is us as leaders, right? We set the tone for the town, for the other boards, how we show up, how we engage, how we work with the town administrator. All of those are really important aspects that I think that we need to look for in our selectmen.
Thank you. Mr. Gabor?
Yes, I took this from our town charter, and it's per the charter, the selectmen act as a CEO. We're elected by residents to represent them in this corporation of Webster. We set broad policy directives and guidelines for the town administrator, officers, and employees. We are the licensing and appointing authority, and we also have the responsibility to conduct investigations when necessary. But I believe the most important thing is to be out there for the community and to be a presence and a resource for our residents. That's really, in a nutshell, all I have to say at this point.
Thank you. Ms. Contos, you already alluded to this a little bit, but how do you plan on building or continuing to build the relationship with our new town administrator?
Great question. I think for anyone who's entering a new role, despite the fact that Rick has 28 years' experience, getting acclimated in the town, getting acclimated with the people in our organization is really important. So for me, this is about offering guidance, being available to him to bounce ideas off of, and really making sure that we're building up trust. I think trust is really important. We don't want to have a culture of fear where we don't have open dialogue and talk about things. So I think for me, this will be setting aside time to sit with Rick, to see what he needs, to also, one of the things that I talked about with him, and we haven't quite executed on because he's really getting oriented and working on budgets, but this is how do we start recognizing people in town that we think he needs to meet, right? That he won't know readily that he needs to be introduced to. So really helping us to facilitate those introductions, so he really gets to know more about the town, about the people he should know. And then lastly, when I talk about getting to know the town, as you move forward with initiatives and what you're doing, looking back and giving some historical context, I think is important, right? You can't change the past, but often if you understand why some decisions were made, what was the context at that time, that puts things in better perspective. And I think in the end, we will be successful as a town if we can help support getting him up and running and getting better acclimated, because his success is our success.
Agreed. Mr. Gabor?
Yes. Well, it has already been said that Rick is he's not only new to Webster, he's new to the area and new to the county. In this early phase, he reminds me of a sponge absorbing a lot of information. And I try to answer his questions and be patient as he's preparing a budget and develops relationships with his management team and employees. I think I try to step back a little bit and measure my asking for time with him. But I've met with him at least once or twice a week for various reasons. And I think things are going to be fine once he gets acclimated to the town and gets past the budget and all these springtime things. And I think the present board, we think similarly and work collectively as a group. And I think Rick is very polished and experienced as a TA, and his longevity in his previous positions speak to the fact that he knows what a good relationship with the board is and that it is very important. I think we're a collaborative team, and I think that'll maintain. So, thank you.
Mr. Bork?
Working with Rick's answer is very easy. Rick knows his job, the Board of Selectmen know their job, and it's just a matter of you being there when he needs help. Again, not meddling into the day-to-day goings-on within the town, letting him deal with that. That's why he's paid the salary that he's paid, and working on that relationship with him when something does come up, that we can help him. And, I worked with 3 town administrators over the 9 years that I was a selectman, and all 3 of them, we had very good relationships. So I wouldn't see that there would be any difference between the last 3 and working with Rick.
All right, Mr. Gabor, you get to start the next question. A lot of economic growth has happened in town recently, and when we say recently, not thinking about COVID period. For example, we have new restaurants in town, the dog parks have been finished, there have been a lot of improvements at the beach. What do you see as the next phase, or how do you think that we should keep the momentum going?
I think, the town has done a lot of work, and members of the community have also done a lot of work to bring all the things that you mentioned about. But given the current economic situation that we're all in, I think it's hard for me to come up with a next phase per se. I don't see nothing new beyond what we need to deal with. currently. And for a while now, the town's banked on growth, and growth is important. Restaurants have come and gone in this time. The problem that I see is that we've still not created a welcoming environment for new businesses. And I've talked with a number of new business owners, and I still hear their frustrations with opening business in Webster. It has to change, and that is one of the discussions that I've had with Rick, and I think we continue to need to improve upon that. We have to be an inviting place and understand the needs of the community. And if you wanted to consider it as the next phase, I believe that we should keep a close eye on what is happening across the river at the old Stevens Linen Building in Dudley. There's a plan for housing and economic revival in that area, and that includes a section of Webster, and I think we should keep an eye on that as we move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bork?
Someone once said, if you build it, they will come. Building on recreational events, I think it has really moved Webster forward in many ways. I do think, and I don't have a say in this, but I do think that maybe even a part-time recreation person could also help in a lot of the events that we have. We have a lot of recreation events going on in the town of Webster now compared to many years ago. Having larger scaling events, build on trying to bring a hotel, motel to the town of Webster. Because we have so many things going on with that, and I'm sure many have seen what's going on at Indian Ranch this year with the many, many, many concerts that they are having, which I think is going to be phenomenal for the town. And the new Samuel Slater experience, building off of that with all the students coming into town, recognizing the town of Webster and what Chris Robert did by bringing that to Webster. And the Indian Princess, they're all attractions to the town of Webster. And with the Chamber of Commerce, which is housed out of my office in Webster, but the Chamber of Commerce is working so closely with the town of Webster to build some of these events and working with them and seeing what we can do to improve the economic development within the town.
Great, thank you. Ms. Contos?
Great. I could say a lot of what they just said, but I'm going to try to change it up a bit. I think, I think one of the things we could do, and we were talking about before the pandemic hit, and that was we were having lots of dialogue with some folks from Hudson to look at what they did to really revitalize their downtown. Certainly talking about what they did in Putnam and what were some of those things that were appealing. So I think we had some ideas on the shelf that, of course, with the pandemic, we had to table. And of course, the economic conditions as a result of the downstream impacts of shutting things down, supply chain challenges, people working from home, not coming into the office has created another type of economic condition that we all have to think about. So I'd like to see us take that off the shelf again and start looking at that and seeing if that's ripe for discussion yet again. I think we got to lean back on, and not that they haven't been looking at it, but of course, we were very much focused on public health over the last couple of years, but really looking at the Economic Development Committee to really take a look at those areas that we can focus in on. Of course, no one likes to see empty buildings across town, but at the same time, the town doesn't own a lot of those buildings. But what we need to do, and I'm going to sound repetitive, but I think it's true, is how do we make establishing a business and doing that and the ease of doing business easier? And I also think it's a real challenge because we have so many people that are so dedicated to their respective functions that they support. And oftentimes some of those functions are in conflict with each other when it comes to standing up a business. So those are the places where internally we have to work on reconciling those things so that it's easier to establish business and attract business in town.
Great. Thank you. All right, and Mr. Bork, if you would start us off for our last planned question. What will you do to encourage more residents to participate in town government and town committees for the betterment of our community?
This is the tough one. It's very tough, as Earl and I were walking upstairs, we're talking about all these openings that we have within the town. And not even to consider, if you look at the ballot this year, on the ballot, there's not one race. There's no one running against anyone. So how do we get people involved? It's very difficult, as I've been involved with many service organizations, Lions clubs, et cetera, over the years. It's been more difficult over the last 5 to 7 years to get anyone to step up and help serve your community. But one of the things I think is important, that in all departments within the town, that we all try to reach out to someone if we see someone in the community that has a special interest in a certain project or a special interest in getting involved with the town. It's our job to potentially reach out to them and ask them if they would like to volunteer. It's very difficult in these times when you have all the COVID going on and people are still afraid to go out, and not all the restaurants are fully open, and for families to say, all right, I'm going to be out 2 nights a week now because I need to volunteer, or I want to volunteer. But if someone just steps up, if we ask people to step up, I think it's the most important thing for the board and all the boards on any committees within the town, to ask people to step up.
Thank you. Ms. Contis?
You said a lot of what I was going to say, so I'm gonna change that.
It's tough being last.
It is a tough one, but, it is hard to get people to step up in whether it's a volunteer position. People are very busy in their lives. And I think some of this might be the outcome of social media. It's been a blessing and a curse, right? You don't have to be places, you don't have to get as actively involved because you can get information. So the way that I go about this is I certainly look for people that I can recruit, take those opportunities to talk, as Don was saying, people who have skill sets that would apply in certain places that you know that they could come in and add value. So it continues to have to happen through networking, recruiting, and then I think the other side of that is getting involved in local government and that perception of politics being ugly. How do we break down that perception, right? How do we break down people's reluctance to get involved because they don't want to deal with the outcome of, the brave warriors behind their keyboards too, right? And so I think part of what we can do, and I think what we have been doing as a board, because I think Earl said this, while we don't all think identically, we work together very cooperatively. So I think if we can bring the right decorum and model that for others, in addition to us recruiting and networking and all doing our part to encourage people, and I am proud of what the board has done. We've placed a lot of attention on looking at those vacancies, posting for them, and we continue to do that as a board. But I think those are some of the things that we can do, and also be positive about the experiences that we have had, right? And what kind of learning you can get from these opportunities as well, because there's a lot that people don't understand about the complexity of how things operate, and I think that's another thing that we can do.
Great. Mr. Gabor?
Well, I think, like I said at the beginning of this session, that I think communication is the number one key to this. And I think we have to, after COVID, re-engage with the public, because I think we're all in a certain state of mind that the isolation of COVID has put us in, and I think we're just coming out of that, hopefully. And I think there's so many ways to communicate now, and I think we've tried every which way and sideways in the past, whether it's Zoom meetings, website, public meetings, YouTube, mail, email, the code red system, flyers, newspapers, telephone calls. We've tried every which way, and I think people have just become immune to that stuff, and there's no one good way. Everybody will claim, well, I want a letter when you got something big going on, or I want YouTube, or I want to be there. Well, not so much I want to be there, but I don't know what's going on. But I think we've got to sort of educate the public and to fine-tune our communication tools. And for me, I think the web is turning into an important tool. I think whenever you want information, you go to the web. I mean, pretty much. I mean, maybe the older people find that a little restrictive, but I think it is. And I think there's a much better way to make our website to both be, to meet the legal requirements of communication of the town, but also the news requirements, and prioritize things and put links in. If schools are an important thing, put a link in with tabs to link that you can do right from the Facebook page without having to search here or go there or do that. 3 steps, 1-step link, and put a priority right on the page. Thank you.
Thank you. My current tagline is Google is my friend, because that's what people do anymore. So very excitingly, we actually have some live audience members. You did, but we actually have some live audience members. Do any of you have any questions for our candidates this evening? Okay.
I'd like to know what improvements you're talking about. I look for it once a week. Other than the sidewalk, I don't see any improvement over there.
But there are plantings that are all plantings.
I thought you said new improvements.
Well, the plantings are an improvement.
Wow.
That also came.
To me, it don't count, so it's actually that physically on paper don't count. It's a nice idea.
Oh, no.
But what's physically there?
Okay, it's plantings, not plantings.
Oh,
Yeah, did you see in front of the Honeydew? In front of Honeydew, they did that big build out, and the town put plantings that are in there.
I did miss that.
Yeah, and then further down, down towards Walgreens, that whole area over there, and then they just did,
They've been working there, they've been working on
yeah, all the sidewalks that are in front of the new laundromat.
I've been told, for instance, if you get a grant for sidewalks, it's gotta be sidewalk, you can't spend anything else. Sidewalks are great, but the way I've seen it, and I've been with it for a few years, once my generation, and maybe the next generation, once we're gone, you're not gonna need sidewalks, because all the young people walking the street anyway. So I don't know that you need to spend too much on the sidewalk. Young people don't wanna use it, they'd rather walk on the street. And I see that all the time, over Negus Street, and Mechanic Street,
Well, I consider myself pretty young, and I want to walk on a sidewalk.
maybe some of you, okay. Maybe I can say the very you. And not, sidewalks are important. One other thing, to me, one of the most important things is to try to welcome business into town. I still think you need at least somebody sitting at a desk in the foyer of the town hall, that a prospective businessman can walk in and ask that person, what kind of permit do I need? What exactly what I have to do to start a business? And if that person doesn't have the answer, that person should be able to say, I don't have the answer. If you want to come back tomorrow or the next day, I have the answer. I think it would be worth investing in somebody that could just be there to talk to a prospective businessman and tell him from the onset exactly what he's going to need to open up a business. I think that's very important. I think it would be very business friendly. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce could help you.
Absolutely.
What I've talked to our new town administrator about making things more easier for these businesses that come into town.
So they can come in and get all the answers. Maybe not today, but in a day or two.
Right. And we're going to be looking into that, and I mean, he's going to be looking into that. And I think it's important to engage the business community and the business association to alert with the inspectors and the planners. If you coming into town, what do you need? I've even talked about maybe a pre-inspection. I'm thinking about coming to this building and I want to open up a restaurant. What do I need? Well, let's do a pre-inspection.
You know what the other said, he either wants to come here or he don't want to. It's him to start up and then get hit with things like, well, you need this. One example, now, this is rude. It's not fact. I heard it's approved. The person who wanted to open the pizza house across the street, it's going to be out of there. He spent a lot of money basically gutting the building. He was required by the town to County Spring, which means he had to have a parking lot dug up. And I guess he did, and he was trying to work a little bit of time on the bill. Well, I don't know, it's a rumor. Rumor is that when they dug up the parking lot, they hit a small section of property somewhere owned by somebody else. I think the owner that bought the apartment buildings on Mechanic Street. They haven't actually settled those right. So the rumor is that that owner owned a small piece of property. And now they're suing the owner of the restaurant $60,000 because the parking lot was damaged by digging from the water leaks. Now, first of all, the town inspector gave the permits for that digging. If anybody should be sued, I think it should be more of the town than the owner. He had all the legal things. Now, this is rumor. But if there's any truth to it, man, that can really, it's not him. He's got, I mean, he can't do anything. He's looking at $60,000 fine from that home for damaging his property.
You ever hear the old story, sorry to interrupt, but you ever hear the old story about when a guy goes out fishing and he's out fishing alone and he casts out the line and he pulls in a fish and it's a kiver and he comes back and he says he captured a whale? It's a rumor. Don't listen to
It is a
rumors.
rumor, and I'll be the first one to say it's a rumor. It might not be true. But even if it's fine.
Yeah, but I think to your point, I think regardless of the rumor, I think the message that I'm hearing from you is that if we can make the work to do business, establish a business, and heat off these things, no one likes to see anybody take an investment and then not be able to carry it forward. I think that's the part you don't want to see.
He was required by the town, I think it's building inspector, somebody issued a permit to do that digging. Sure, that's somebody had known about this piece of property, if there's any truth to it. Should have been a record of it. I mean, now, nailed him. Who's liable to do everything? You don't illegal, don't want the town telling them.
Well, sir, I don't think we're here to settle that civic matter. We're here to hear from our candidates and
All right.
receive their input, but thank you for your
I'm
comment.
just saying it's not very friendly.
And I think that they're hearing you loud and clear, and what I've heard so far, they're in agreement that it could be easier for businesses coming to town, so. Do we have other questions? Yes.
I do have a question. So the number 5 question was, what will you do to encourage more residents to participate in local government and town committees? And I loved your answers about recruitment, word of mouth, the ask. The number 1 reason people don't volunteer is because nobody's ever asked them to. Don't know if you knew that. My concern is, has there been conversation about doing just that? How do you diversify the people you're asking? The town is becoming very diverse, and as one of the first Hispanic families to move to this town, I'm very happy to see that it's becoming more diverse. But if you all only, and I don't know this for a fact, if you're only asking the people that you know, or you're recruiting the people in your circle, then I get concerned that there's a population of people in our town that are not being represented. So is there conversation about diversifying possibly the face of town government in the town?
Well, I think, I'm going back to communication, because I think even these new residents in town, whether you've been here 10 years or 1 year, we are diversifying, and we're bringing a mini subset community into town that's growing. So I think the important thing is to start a conversation with that community. The Latin Festival that's been a couple of years, I think that would be a good opportunity to be available there to answer questions. But I think the communication thing is, if something's on your mind about the town and you want to know more about it, go to that meeting. Just listen, whether it's the school or water or senior citizens or whatever it is, just go to their meetings and make the website better. I think that's how 9/10 of us get involved, is by going to meetings and listening. Doesn't matter what diversified, if you're diversified or not. I mean, if there's a language barrier, that's a different story. But that's not always the case. So that's my feeling on it. And I, for one, would be available to, whether it's a church group or a small, I mean, one-on-one is, we don't get paid enough. We don't get, but to speak to a group of people, I don't have a problem with that, and I'm sure the other selectmen would make themselves available to answer, listen to your questions, listen to your concerns, direct you to the right place. But I think you can do it on your own, and just whatever appeals to you, look online, and we got to make that website better, and go to a meeting, go to a Zoom meeting. If you don't know how to go on Zoom, ask a friend, but we can only do so much. The residents have to do their part too, I believe.
Thank you. Would either of our other candidates
Anyone you want?
respond?
I go next. I think that's a good question. I think diversity is important. And oftentimes, the more diverse you start getting, the more you attract more people to come in, right? Because sometimes it's harder to do that. So for myself, I had exposure having my kids in the high school and being friends with different family members that we've known. But I think you raise a good point that maybe there is some more outreach we should do in certain areas. And I think that's fair. I have had my eye over the last couple of years on diversity, even with some board appointments as well, looking across to make sure that whether we're talking about gender or we're looking at race on both of those, that's something that I've certainly paid attention to. And in fact, I voted in a different direction than the rest of the board on one particular appointment on that basis. But Monica, really good question, but I think you just gave me some food for thought about other ways in which we can think about that recruitment, and maybe some of those methods, and when we do the communication, maybe there's other places we can send that out to more directly and connect in different areas to do that. So thanks for that question.
I think it's important that we look at, and there may be ways of doing it. I think you just need to check on the legality of doing it. Is, for instance, like our website, you can just do a drop-down menu and it can change the language. If someone feels more comfortable speaking in Chinese, or they want to speak in Spanish or read in either one of those languages, it's just a Google change at the top. You just choose your language. I think also in many of the posts that the town may put out, whether it be on Facebook or what have you, there'd be if it says, apply here, whatever, for the town of Webster, it also says it in 2 or 3 other languages that are popular, for the town, because it's including other people who may not feel comfortable speaking in English language. And then also in the end, when we're out and we hear people talking or complaining about the town, or they say, speak up, don't be afraid, because we're the selectmen are the CEOs of the town, and you just approach the person. I mean, obviously, we're not afraid of stepping up, so we should be okay with stepping up if you hear someone who's out in the community. And I don't think any of us are opposed at any time to speaking with anyone when we're out to dinner or what have you, when we see people.
Any other questions?
Sure. A good example of that is the English and Spanish presentation for the school building.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we put up. And I'm just wondering if you can give your thoughts a little bit on the building project. It's obviously going to be on the election ballot.
Which order do you want to go in? I can.
Ladies
I'll
first.
start. I've actually been on the building committee, and I think what's really important that we need to focus in on, having just had 2 children recently graduate from the high school, one last year, one several years ago, is there a lot of mechanical constraints within that building, improvements that are needed. lots of issues within the building with heating and cooling, and just general breakdown overall. As you know, we've been going through this initiative through the state, working through this project, through this design phase. And there are certain requirements. I think I've seen some comments. I don't spend much time on Facebook. However, the few things I have seen is I know there's a lot of questions like, why not just do the minimum viable renovations that are needed? And I will share with you, I went into it with that same approach. But we are guided and obligated under the constraints of how the building committee, not the building committee, but at the state, how they look at this. And it can't just be what you need to do physically to the building. We have to look and justify the pathways and the educational programs that we'll also offer. And they partner and they marry those two things together. The state will not offer the reimbursement for just those renovations alone, unfortunately. So that's where you have to understand that process and the complexity of that and the constraints that come with it. And that if we look at the cost just to do those renovations alone with no reimbursement versus actually doing the full project, it actually, from an economic standpoint, is more advantageous to go forward with the full project. I'll close with, prior to my son graduating, there was one spring afternoon, and many children will tell you this, it was pretty warm inside one of the inner classrooms, and I got a text from him. It was right after I got elected, and they said, "Hey, Madam Selectman, it's pretty hot in here. I'm sweating." I won't say what he said. He said, "I'm sweating. Can you do something about this? Because it's really a struggle." And I had to answer back that no, I couldn't, and he'd have to deal with it and suffer. However, I think the fact is the environment does play a role, right? If heating and cooling is not up to standards, it's hard to learn, it's hard to focus, especially after a long day. And there are real constraints and concerns with the heating system that do need to be addressed.
Let me say one or two things on that, and you'll see I'm not from there. They had a nice presentation on that at the Webster Senior Center, maybe about a month. It was a very good presentation. First of all, I'm completely in favor of voters will realize that if they vote for just the minimum work has to be done. All they're doing is put a Band-Aid on it. They're spending money on something that they're going to have to redo eventually anyway. I hope they do vote for what you people planned. I think the committee that's got into that, I think they've done a damn good job. I think they've already looked at, is it cheap to demolish the building, or are they better off to renovate it? And I think they feel renovation is the way to go. I think they've done an excellent job. As I said, that was a very good presentation. I think the voters have to understand that if they vote to just go for a couple $1 million to patch it up, that's all they're doing is patching it up. And I won't say anymore. And I have no children. I've got no axe to grind. I mean, I have no children in the school system or anything, but I just think the kids deserve a good quality building. I just think, I hope the voters do vote for it, but I'm afraid they probably won't.
Thank you for your comments. Let's let the other two candidates make theirs as well.
Well, I think the case is clear. I mean, if you have any acquaintance with the school that was put in place in, what, 79, you'll know that it's in need. They've gone for a boiler a few years ago. We authorized that boiler. They had one boiler shut down. The windows, they're in need of replacement. The offices, some of the rooms are windowless. They're inner rooms. Try to put yourself in a room with no window or anything and do your job and be a student. And, I mean, it's just not acceptable anymore. And I think it's a reasonable solution. I don't see anybody come up with anything better. I don't think, you try to bring almost a 50-year-old building up to code, and there's new restrictions, and you put all that together, and yes, it's going to cost money. As I said before, infrastructure, that's buildings. It's costing money. I think I understand the impact, but anything's going to be an impact if it's money in today's world. You have to make sure your money's spent wisely and judiciously and plan for it. I think that's the best you can do in today's world, so I support it.
I think it's important that we stop and look at, I think it's been 4 or 5 years, has it been, since we built the new library? And how much pushback did we have on the new library? And that library is a beautiful facility that gets used every single day, and that is a state of the art. Wouldn't we want that for our children in school? What do you want your town to look like?
Thank you. All right, wonderful. Well, on behalf of the Democratic Town Committee, I would like to close with some thank yous. First, to all of our candidates for taking times out of your busy lives to come and talk with us this evening. To our live audience members for your contribution to the discussion. To Monica, our timekeeper, to Carol, our cable access person, and to Brian, who has handled our Facebook streaming. On behalf of our committee and our chair, who was unable to be with us tonight, we thank you all. I would like to close with a reminder that our elections are this coming Monday. The voting takes place here at Town Hall. Polls open at 7 a.m. and they're open and available all day until 8 p.m. On this ballot, there are positions for the Selectmen, School Committee, Regional Vocational School Committee, Finance Committee, Trustees of the Public Library, Board of Health, Redevelopment Authority, and Town Moderator. So there's a lot of openings and a lot of possibilities in town, and it's a good way to see some people that are willing to do the work get elected. Second, we also have an annual town meeting on Monday, May 9th at Bartlett High School. At the moment, there is a special town meeting scheduled for 6 p.m., followed by the regular town meeting, which will take place at 7 p.m. If you have not attended a town meeting yet, we've stepped into the 21st century. Participants vote with a clicker, and it is a very efficient and effective format for a meeting.
Just interject.
Yes.
The town meetings, both the special and regular town meeting, will be held in the auditorium at Bartlett this year.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. So thank you for listening. thank you for your questions and your participation, and please come out and vote on Monday. Your voice matters.